Welcome back to Under Oath. With us today is writer and columnist Dave Barry. Dave, can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Thank you.
Wow. I was talking with you earlier before we got into this about you actually being a serious Floridian, going to all the Hurricane games. I mean, you adopted Miami like it was home almost immediately.
I absolutely loved Miami. Now, when I first came down here, it was in the Miami Herald hired me in like 1983, and they flew me down, and I met everybody, and this was back in the cocaine cowboy era.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I'm never going to live here. This city is just, I got lost. I got the traffic, the craziness. And so for the next 3 years, I lived in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. And I was the humor columnist for the Miami Herald. And during those 3 years, they flew me down. I did stories down here and got to meet people. And the more I would come to Miami, the more I'd think, if you're going to write humor for a living, this is a pretty rich area. So I came to love Miami. And so I moved here in 1986, almost 40 years ago now. And I've been here ever since. So now I'm a Miami guy. I'm a Florida guy.
You know what I love about you specifically is everyone knows you as a columnist, but Miami knows you as their columnist. There was an ownership where we said, no, he's ours. Yeah. And that was a pretty cool thing because Miami is known for a couple things, but very rarely does a writer get that kind of credit in a monster city, in a big size city, not like a small town, but, like a city as big as Miami.
Yeah, I've become associated with the city. Carl Hiaasen is very much associated with, Florida, more the whole state. But yeah, I'm Miami. I defend Miami. I tell everybody it's like, it's not, my joke is we have a new attitude down here, new tourism promotion slogan, come back to Miami. We weren't shooting at you.
Something like that. We were never the murder capital, like Philadelphia or New Orleans. We always got away with that.
No, Miami, Miami's reputation is much worse than Miami, in my opinion. And that's been true for a long time.
See, what cuts me up is you came down at the same time that Miami Vice was big. And I mean, it's just so funny that you started in this city that now has this huge reputation because of a TV show.
Well, and what was funny, if you remember the Miami Vice era, Miami was dealing with its massive drug and, crime problem for a while, especially the drug thing, a lot of cocaine. And the city fathers and the Chamber of Commerce, the politicians hated the idea of Miami Vice, hated it. Miami was trying to be Orlando back then. We wanted to be family friendly and then this show comes and it's about everybody in the show is a drug dealer. Like if Don Johnson and Philip Michael just going all around and all they're ever doing. It seems like everybody in Miami is in the drug business. And everybody's like, oh no, this is terrible for our image. And of course the opposite happened. Everybody went, wow, Miami is so cool. Look at how they wear pastels and they drive these cool cars. And suddenly, that became Miami's thing. We're not Orlando. We are not family friendly. We're like drugs and cars but people loved it. And it was like, in a weird way, it was like the savior of the image of Miami at the beginning of the renaissance of Miami tourism was that show.
It's such a crazy thing. And I get the opportunity. I write some comic books. I write some children's books. I get to do stand-up. But when I think about prolific writers, I think of Stephen King and you. It is the list and the lit. And I always, I write, but I don't write like you write. Like it's it's breathing. It's just so amazing.
Well, I don't write like Stephen King writes. I'm in a rock band with Stephen King, and he's my friend. And that guy writes a book like every 5 minutes. If you added all the books that I've ever written together, it'd be equivalent of 2 months of Stephen King's output. The guy's, I don't know how he does it. It's phenomenal. But yeah, I've been writing. First of all, I'm old. So I'm going to be 78 years old in a couple of weeks. So that's all I've ever done is write. So if you don't die, which I've so far not done, that I'm aware of, and you keep writing, you're going to end up with a whole lot of books. They won't necessarily be good books, but there'll be a lot of them.
I grew up in Miami, so Miami in the 70s in Miami, you're the young whippersnapper on Miami Beach. So I think you're okay with that.
All right, yeah, that's true. I tell everybody 77 is the new 74.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, you got a new book out called Class Clown, The Memories of a Professional Wise Ass. I love that concept because it has that Peter Pan feeling about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I got told more than once, and I was actually elected class clown at Pleasantville High School, Pleasantville, New York, class of 1965, and I was a wise ass back then. I still am, but I got told more than once by teachers after I disrupted another class. Well, that's very funny, but you cannot joke your way through life. Which turns out to be untrue. You can, in fact, joke your way through life, and this book is the story of how I did that.
When I think about being able to be a wise ass, because I'm an attorney, I pulled off a lot of nonsense in courtrooms. I put on a Tigger costume once in a courtroom, and I think that being a wise ass, it's either part of your occupation or it's not.
Yeah, and if you are one, and you are, and I am, you can't not be that. Like you can't, you just can't. You pull it back and say, no, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut here. Nope, you got to say it. Whatever it is, you got to go through with it.
When I'm at conventions, a lot of people come up to me and they'll ask me what it takes to be a writer, and they go, "I want to be a writer." And I said, "Well, do you write?" And they look at me and they go, "Well, I'm just trying to get some inspiration." And I just don't see that. I don't see it.
If you wait for inspiration, you will never be a writer. And I get the same thing. Like, I want to be a writer. And I go like, well, do you write? No, I don't write. And to me, that's like saying, I want to be a concert violinist. And I go like, well, do you ever play the violin? Do you practice? Do you own a violin? No, but I'd like to do that. No, it doesn't work that way. It's the same thing. You have to do it a lot, and you have to suck at it for a long time, usually at the beginning, before you really can do it in a way that people are going to want to pay you for.
The more I learned about structure, I always wondered if that affected my creativity. Now, knowing how I have to do things and how I plug and play things, and I always wondered, the more you learn, the less the ideas come out, or do you just seem to be more organized in the way you throw up all your ideas?
I have no idea what that question is.
Well, I mean, when we first start, we learn, we're just writing. And then somebody says to us, hey, you got to organize your stuff. You got to know your endings. You got to do this. And the more you learn.
I see. Well, yeah, no, I mean, technique is very important. I think, you do get better at structuring jokes, setting up a joke and delivering the punchline, and then not repeating it too much, that kind of stuff. Technique is important, but in the end, there has to be some spark of something that was funny, that was original, that preceded all that. And then what you get better at, I think, is what you're talking about, is like the structure, the technique, the execution. But there has to be something going on in your brain before all that to make it work.
When we talked earlier about writing, everybody wants to be a writer. I think they like it because there's a celebrity concept to it. There's, I'm a creative person, I'm this. But they don't know about the 8 hours you've been in your room typing and typing. They don't know about the editing process. They don't really think about it. And by the time your book comes out, you're already 2 books into something else. And
they also don't, partly it's that, there's work involved in writing. I'm not saying it's like the hardest work. It's certainly not physical work, but it's work. You got to put it in. The other thing is just writing a book, publishing a book does not make you famous. No. This is like the hard lesson that a lot of writers get. They get a book out and then, it doesn't show up in the stores. Nobody buys it. They don't get on TV. They don't get on, Oprah doesn't pick you to be in her book club. There's like thousands and thousands and thousands of books come out every year. It's very hard to get any attention whatsoever. So it's not really as glamorous as people think it is, unless you're Stephen King.
Well, even with him, I wonder, over a period of time, you're going, okay, I have another book. And when people start critiquing you, I mean, that's the hardest thing, is the reviews and the critiquement. And you're going, listen, I wrote it because I enjoy it. I don't know if it's good or not. It just came out.
Don't read reviews. That's, I'm in the band that I'm in with Stephen King. I'm also with Amy Tan. And Amy Tan told me long ago, she said, just don't read reviews. Just don't, because if they're good, you'll feel good about it. But if one of them's bad, that's the one you'll remember for the rest of your life. So, and it won't change what you wrote, and it's just one person's opinion. So I have found it to be excellent advice. I don't read reviews. If somebody says, you got a rave review here, I might read it just because I know ahead of time it's a rave review. But that doesn't really, it doesn't matter if that's a rave review, really, because, it still doesn't change what you wrote. So it's better to not pay attention to reviews, is my view.
I think about writing jokes because I also do stand-up. And when a joke doesn't fall or hit, you're kind of like going, God, it's a good joke, though. And you can
Nope.
you feel it's a good joke. But when it doesn't, how many times have you gone, laughed at your own thing and then later going, I guess it wasn't funny.
That's what I tell everybody this. That's the most important lesson about humor. It's supposed to be funny. And you can't say that it's funny if people don't laugh. It's just the way it is. What works, works, and what doesn't work, doesn't work. But you must accept that people, if they don't laugh, that it didn't work. And you can claim to be brilliant, but it still didn't work. So there you are. And that happens to everybody, I think. And sometimes I think, like it can be like it really was a good joke. You really did execute it. You did everything right. But for whatever reason, it doesn't work. You have to accept that.
Now, I'm going to talk about editing. Have you ever had an editor?
Yeah, many. My column ran in 500 newspapers, and every one of them had an editor, and every single one of those editors would read my column and decide what to do with it. And sometimes they would change things, and sometimes they would delete things. So I had many, 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 way too many editors. But I only had a couple that I liked and trusted, the ones who I worked for at the Miami Herald, Gene Weingarten, Tom Schroeder, mainly, two guys that are wonderful word guys and I would argue with them. I mean, I would sometimes think they were wrong and we would fight but I respected them. Beyond that, a lot of editors I don't really care for. My book editors have been, for the most part, terrific. But
it's hard. That's the hardest thing about writing is when you write something and somebody else goes, no, I don't think this is good, or I don't think this is funny. And I've actually, when I've signed a book, I've written the joke back into it just because I'm so mad that the editor cut it out. And
I never thought to do that. That's extreme, buddy.
Yeah, it was. I still do it. Somebody will put that book in front of me and I'll write it back in. I'll go, no, see this, the good joke? And I'll go, was it funny? And sometimes they go, yeah, it's funny. And sometimes they go, it wasn't. I said, well, maybe they should have kept it out. I don't know. So I can't imagine how tough have you ever had anything pulled out where you fought and they still kicked it out?
Yeah, I mean, I used to write, the Washington Post used to run my year in review, and they were the biggest paper that ran it. I wrote this year in review every year, and each year they got a little more woke, if that can use that term, PC, whatever.
Listen, I don't censor anybody.
And they would pull, I would see more and more like jokes, and they would explain to me why, and I'm like, that's ridiculous, But I didn't argue too much about it, but I did get irritated, and I would run the same joke again, what you did really, basically, and every other paper, I would leave it in, and the Washington Post would pull it out. Nobody would ever complain. So yeah, I mean, I'm still bitter about that. Some of the jokes the Washington Post yanked out of uber sensitivity to their readers. I thought, just stupid. And, that happened when I wrote my syndicated column. There were many newspapers that would either just not run the column that week or would, yank parts of it out. Nothing I could do about it, but I didn't like it.
Now, when you walk away, you go, listen, I need a break. I'm a little, whatever reason. And you're thinking to yourself, and everybody, you're getting emails. Well, not emails, but you're getting letters. People are saying, hey, I miss your column. I miss this. I miss it. Please come back. Please come back. How tough was it for you to go, no, I'm good?
It was easy. I really was done in 2005 when I stopped writing my weekly column. Now, that said, earlier this year, I started writing a Substack, which is essentially a column with way fewer time restrictions and like I don't have a deadline and I don't have editors, so it's a lot more free form. But I've been doing that, and that's been fun. And a lot of the people who have subscribed to that Substack said, "Boy, I missed your column. It's I'm glad to see it back." But I mean, I didn't mind not doing it. I felt like I'd done it, and I like what I'm doing now, so I don't have any regrets.
When you come back, because I took a hiatus, I got mad over something, and that always the way it works. You get mad and you go, I'm not doing this. And I took that break. And when I came back, I felt I was clean. I felt like I wasn't as angry as I was when I walked away. I wasn't as tired, and I was actually writing again because I loved it. I mean, is that where we live right now?
Yeah, that's with me in the Substack. I've really enjoyed writing it again. I find myself thinking more in terms of columns again, which for a long time I just thought about books, and I like that. I'm enjoying being back, and I feel like freer. Like I'm 77 years old, and I don't feel like I don't feel like I have anything to prove anymore. I can just do what I think is funny, what I want to do, and it's working out.
Now, you and I grew up at a time where there were no cell phones, there was no internet and everything else. You put something out, it wasn't instantaneously put out there to the whole world. I mean, I can't imagine if you would have started 20 years later and would have seen that column would have been, oh yeah, it's a forum and all these people are commenting, and you would have gotten direct feedback from the people. I mean, I can't even imagine what that would have been like.
Yeah, I did get a lot of feedback. I encouraged it always. It was one of the reasons I was successful, I think, as a syndicated columnist, was I would constantly run columns based on letters that I'd gotten from readers, and I would always give them credit. And in the column, I would use their names, and thank them. And so I got a tremendous amount of feedback in a pre-internet time. It wasn't instantaneous, but it was pretty quick. I mean, a column would run, and a couple days later, my mailbox was full of literal mail. So I don't know that it would have changed that much in that respect. What really changed was that the newspaper industry died. So like the idea of a focused place where a lot of people went for the same, then we're all reading the same thing at the same time, kind of disappeared and was replaced by a billion different tweets and blogs and whatever.
Well, I've got about a little over a minute left, and I guess I remember the first time I saw AI, which was a program called Jasper about a year. God, it must have been about 5 years ago. And I watched what it did and how it created things. And it scared the crap out of me. I'm going, wow, is our creativity sitting in a box now where somebody can just go, tell me a story about a monkey and make it funnier? And it just keeps pumping stuff out. And I mean, it just feels like we're losing something.
Yeah, but it's it's there. It's real. It's not going away. I don't know. So far, I don't find it to be that good at humor, but everybody assures me it'll get there. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just good that I'm really, really old. You don't have to, I don't have to compete with AI anymore, or I won't. I'll be gone by the time it's that good. I don't know. I have no lifeline to throw you there, because AI is not going away.
No, genie's out of the bottle. That's the way it works. But let me thank you again. Dave Barry's book, Class Clown, The Memoirs of a Professional Wise Ass, How I Went 77 Years Without Growing Up. It's out now. Go to Amazon, go wherever you need to go, and enjoy it like you have the rest of his books. Thanks for being, Dave.
Thanks for having me. Go Panthers.